In 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub on the other side, and we anxiously anticipate John U. Bacon every week. I told you the story about how I was out at Tropical Smoothie Cafe, and the guy stopped me as I was walking out. Hey, I love it when John U. Bacon comes on because we tackle all the topics, the fun ones and the not so fun ones, which is where we're going to be today, talking about a not so fun topic that Bakes has been all over. John U. Bacon, top of the morning, my friend.
Top of the morning indeed. Busy week.
Yeah, very, very busy week. We got the news that the Wilmer Hill report and the details of the Wilmer Hill report that the Michigan Athletic Department, the War Manual, got them back in May. Got the details back in May, got the report back in May, which begs the question as we jump right in. I'm curious, Bakes, have you gotten any feel for, gotten indication from anyone you've talked to about what has been going on the last 3 months, the time since they received a report up until now, which sounds like, according to your reporting, there'll be a likely resolution today?
Yes, and we're talking about, of course, head coach Mel Pearson of the Michigan hockey team. Report commissioned by the regents, and I assume recommended by the general counsel's office, so I'm not sure about that, but I would guess that, as it was for the Dr. Anderson case. Wilmer Hill is a hotshot law firm in D.C. They're external, and once again, the regents gave them the exact right directions, which is go wherever you need to go and talk to people you need to talk to. If you get any interference by anybody, let us know. So I will say this, there'll be a lot of pros and cons in this conversation, to say the least, for U of M and those involved. But one undeniable pro is, as they did with the Dr. Anderson case, they got an outside law firm and opened all the doors and windows, which others in the situation have not done. And that's, the rest of the Big Ten East, basically. That's a big difference. And without that report, frankly, Sam, you and I are not having this conversation today. So the report comes down May 5th. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I said no. That's I'm agreeing. It's true. We wouldn't be having this conversation had they not commissioned an external party to come in and look behind all the, every corner of the program to try to find out where the issues lie.
Exactly right. So they did a great job with it. Again, these are former federal prosecutors in many cases working on these cases. 70 pages, very thorough, well written. Not that matters to anybody but me, perhaps. So it's not hard to comprehend, and even for a non-lawyer. And crucially, and you have to give a lot of credit here, a lot of people came forward. I know they were reluctant to do so. It was not easy. This is people like Christy McNeil and Ian Hume, who work in the department currently for Mel Pearson, and those who left unhappily. That includes Laura Durkee and others, and includes the players. And in all those cases, I think everybody was nervous about talking to these guys, and their faith was restored that it would be handled appropriately. Without that, in the report and the report itself, I don't know very much. So one question is, it was delivered on May 5th to those in the report. And I understand that Ward Manual got it a month later. So there's 1 month delay. The regions got it, I believe, at least in June. Now they, of course.
So wait, back up, Bakes, for a second, because this, the timeline of things is important. It had been reported that that Ward received the report in May. You're saying that that's not accurate?
I've heard conflicting reports. One, that the people involved got it first, which would be Mel Pearson and those who are testifying, and the latest Ward would have gotten it would be early June. Even there, you got 2 months. So it doesn't answer the whole question by any means.
Okay.
I don't know the exact timing on that. I'll say that. And of course, the regions at that time were picking a president, which is all consuming. These are unpaid people who have serious day jobs. But having said that, Sam, I got the report Sunday night. I read it Monday morning. Ran through it pretty fast, about an hour. And I wrote 1,000 words in half an hour. If people involved don't have 90 minutes, then we have the wrong people involved. So that's how long it took me to break the story, 90 minutes. So
Yeah, and so
it was not
definitely, yeah, I'm
right.
with you. I'm with you on that. You read the report, and I want to go over some of the details. Go through the details with you because we have an hour, so we can dig into everything. But you read some of those things in the report, and any one of them could be reason to not continue employment, right? That
I would
that
say, in
yeah,
my
that they took time, whether it's 2 months or 3 months, that they took more time to get to the place where they apparently are today, at least according to your reporting, is a bit curious to me. But let's start with the Rick Bancroft piece. Kind of give me your take on the the retirement. I'm using air quotes. Seems
Mhm.
pretty likely that that was a forced retirement. And then I also want your take on, how long did this persist? How long had this problem been evident? And was it something that Mel actively ignored, or do you see it as one that he was that there was this basically dereliction of duty, that he was asleep at the wheel when it came to that part of the job?
Great questions. I would say it boils down to four things in the report, any one of which, as you say, could be, depends on who's making the call, grounds for dismissal. The first one is somebody in the department, it's not clear if it comes directly from Mel or not, but telling the players to lie about COVID contact, about the contact list in the 2021 NCAA tournament, about who they've been in contact with and who they haven't been, and so on. So that could be an issue there, right there. Of course, not lying about results themselves, which came in positive, and therefore they dropped out of the tournament. So my guess is that one wouldn't stick as far as dismissal goes, but it's not a good look. Item two is Rick Bancroft. I've known Rick. Here's the crappy part about this whole thing. For me, I know everybody involved. I consider pretty much all of them friends, including Mel Pearson, and those who are testifying against him. So it's deeply unpleasant, to say the least. I've known Rick for 25 years, so I always got along with him fine. But this apparently has been persisting for many years. However, by all accounts, it got much worse once Mel became the head coach. Berensen's not a guy you mess with, frankly. That's a look from him is enough to get almost anybody, including me, in line in terms of behavior and whatnot. And it should be noted that Laura Durkee, the longtime assistant for Red, had worked very happily for Red, even though Bancroft's there for many years. It was when Mel takes over, and she finally felt that she had to leave a year ago, basically. So that it clearly.
Basically, so he started doing things under Mel's watch that he wasn't doing under Red's watch. Is that?
I think the sheer volume of it, the persistence. I don't have exact data here, obviously, but what was low grade radiation for years became far more intense under Mel. That's what I hear. So I'm not sure if there's anything particular, just the volume of it and the severity of it, I guess. The sense that no one's going to catch me, no one's going to say anything. So that was on his watch, of course, and naturally the people in question, the WilmerHale folks, pulled that out. And they said, and I quote, "The investigators raised the question of Pearson's inability or unwillingness to hold Mr. Bancroft accountable for his conduct." In other words, me saying this now, Pearson was well aware of the abuse, or should have been, and did nothing. It gives you the usual bad options. Either you should have known and you didn't, or you did know and you didn't care. In this case, that is a small office. It's impossible to imagine not knowing. It is to me anyway.
Yeah,
So that is
really, really odd that you say, how long has he been in that position? 25 years. And the last three, he just decides to go all caveman. I mean, what happened to bring about that?
I mean, I can't draw an exact line, but the sense is that when the mouse is away, when the cat is away, the mouse will play. That when Berensen is there, things were kept within a certain realm. And then when he was gone, it was not. And then even while Mel was there, it got worse year by year till finally Laura Durkee and others could not tolerate it. So Laura Durkee, by the way, I have to say, I've known her for a long time. I would bet the ranch on her and testimony. She is A+ employee. She's phenomenal, hardworking, not a clock watcher, Everybody loves her. She's the den mother of the program. She's got thick skin. She does not run to HR or anybody for small potatoes. She was encouraged to talk. She was not her idea. And when I saw that last year, that's when my eyebrows first went up. That she is leaving essentially involuntarily. I mean, her own choice, but not happily. I'll say that she did not want to leave. She felt it was intolerable. So when that happens, that gets my attention because she is no wimp, and that mattered to me. So there's the bankrupt piece. And, look, Michigan saw fit to and retire in quotes is exactly right. What angers those involved is that he still keeps his full benefits. And Jason Girdham, who had been the sports information director years ago, actually tweeted about this and following up to my tweets on this, saying just that he's angered that bankrupt keeps his benefits. So that's where that one lies. I will say, to their credit, one of the regents reached out to Jason Girdham unbidden and have a good conversation with him. So I think the regents seem determined at this stage to do the right thing. But bankrupt is one piece, and then you get to the next piece, which is Strauss-Mann. This one also raised my eyebrows when I saw Laura Durkee leaving, and your senior captain, the first one I believe in the 100-year history of Michigan hockey, first goalie to wear the C. It's unheard of. Obviously, he must be one hell of a leader to have that C as a goalie. He's a business school student in great standing, so he had no reason to leave academically. Some guys are into school, some guys aren't. This guy was way into school. Great leader, and the CCHA Big Ten goalie of the year the previous year. So it's not his ability, it's not his scholarship, and it's not his team chemistry. He's A+ in all of those, and he sees fit to play minor league hockey. He's not that impressive in Sweden his senior year to avoid, he felt, the wrath of Mel Pearson likely being benched the entire season. That is deeply troubling. And of all these things we're talking about, look, the COVID thing could be a crime. The harassment could be a crime. This is not a crime. There's no laws in the books making it a crime. This one, Sam, bothers me the most because this goes right to the core mission of anybody who teaches and coaches. And as you know, I've done lots of both. Is this the Hippocratic Oath for doctors? Above all, do no harm. We are here for the students to develop them, to help them find their potential, to support them in almost any way we can. And this goes to the exact opposite. And it's not Strauss-Mann who testified. He was too afraid to testify. Right. It's his teammates who testified in his behalf. That I don't know how you spin that. That's just not good.
All right, so let's dig into the Strauss-Mann piece. We're talking to John U. Bacon this morning here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. Hey, me, the neophyte hockey guy that I am, that definitely caught my attention in a huge way. Now, the assumption on the outside that you make is, okay, he sees Eric Portillo coming up behind him, and he just sees like his playing time is going to decrease, maybe significantly, so he decided to go elsewhere. That is the external impression until you read this report. And I'm curious if you were able to get a bead on what were the issues he raised. What were the things that he said that resulted in the intimidation? Have you gotten a feel for that?
Yes. After the 2021 NCAA tournament, which they had to bow out of due to COVID, and they had a hell of a team that year as well. And look, what is not being discussed is Mel's success as a coach. That they've had great teams under Mel. He brought the program back. It had slipped a bit in Barron's last couple of years. A perennial tournament team, a Frozen Four team this year, number one in the country this year for much of the season. The best recruiting class ever in terms of 4 out of 5 NHL draft picks for Michigan players. That no one's come close to that before, and I doubt anybody will again. It's just too incredible. So we're not talking about a losing program here or a program that can't compete. So anyway, that's on the list. But apparently there are problems with the culture that Strauss-Mann, a captain, wanted to bring to Mel Pearson after the 2021 season with the support of his soon-to-be senior classmates. And look, that's exactly what a captain is supposed to do. And I've got a chunk in my book when my captain, Chris Kunkel, captain in 02, does the exact same thing, brings some concerns to me that they're tired of hearing about the previous year's team. They want the study table at the rink instead of at the high school, some things like this. And they're all to make us better, and I had no problem doing it. But I write in the book, there are a lot of ways to respond to this, and a lot of people respond by being defensive and shutting things down, and that's exactly what happened here. So basically at that point, Mel gets essentially paranoid, does not trust Strauss-Mann, feels that he's trying to lead a mutiny, which is not the impression of anybody else involved. And then that's basically shuts him out, and now they have a one-on-one conversation which ends very badly in terms of witnesses who saw it, and basically shouting, tension, all that good stuff. And that's when Strauss knows he's got to go. Furthermore, there's some evidence of Mel Pearson bad-mouthing Strauss to NHL agents and scouts and whatnot, which is beyond the pale.
So you get to the point where your captain transfers, and then you have the other senior. So when does the senior survey? When does that take place? You have a feel for that, where the others say, "Hey, we concur with the issues that he raised, but we didn't want to come forward because we felt like we would suffer the same sort of consequences and repercussions he did." Do you know when that took place? How long has Michigan had to digest that?
I believe it's the same spring of 2021. And that, of course, is also very revealing. It must be said in Mel's defense that the report cites him calling one of the players a Jew in a derisive way, which the teammates reported. That was apparently directed at Strauss-Mann, who's Jewish. And Strauss has told others, not me directly, that that's taken out of context, and it was not, he felt, an anti-Semitic comment. So let's be as fair as we can across the board. But the other stuff in there is quite damning, and it's the impression the players had about the program, about the leadership, about their comfort level being in the locker room, which is pretty low, frankly. So that's another eye-opener there.
So, question for you on that, Bakes, because I'm trying to parse through when you see that from members of the team, why that, the level of, because I'm sure it raised some alarm bells, but that it's not a 5-alarm fire. Why doesn't it raise to that level? And the only thing that I can come up with is that you didn't have everyone. How pervasive was it? So let's how pervasive was that? Was it the entire team? You mentioned the seniors. Did the rest of the team feel that way? All these young guys that decided to come back, for instance, and play. Was that despite their misgivings about the culture in the program, and they just wanted to be together as a team and make a run? I mean, what feel do you have for how pervasive that sentiment was about, hey, this is a toxic environment?
It's a few things. One, first of all, it's hard to tell exactly with these things because you don't know who's willing to speak up and who isn't. About a third of the team, and Katie Strang breaks this down very well in her article in The Athletic, which I commend to your attention. She did a very good job on this. And she's a very serious journalist in my view. She did the reporting on the Blackhawks, which resulted in Joel Quenneville and Bowman and others being released on the videographer sexually abusing one of the players. And that lay dormant for 12 years, and she got to that. But anyway, that about a third of the players reported these negative things. Now, do more want to and are afraid to? Hard to say. As a third of the players unusual on any given team, of course, you'll always get people grumbling. That's understood. But that seems high to me. That seems very high to me, and it certainly warrants a better look. Now, your earlier question is, why did the report sit around for 2 to 3 months? Depends on whom you ask, but 2 months at the minimum. I've got other questions. Without the report, again, we're not having this conversation. That report is commissioned by the Hill, by people on the Hill, not in the Regents, not the athletic department. The athletic department has got human resources. They have the Title IX group. They've got compliance. They have several ways to capture this stuff, and they were approached by these players and employees in various ways, and we never heard about it from those guys. It's the report that broke through. So I question if the safeguards in place are sufficient and are working properly. I can't tell from this. I don't know why only the report seems to have made a difference and nothing else. That's a fair question.
All right, so let's fast forward to the report. They have it for at least 2 months, maybe three. I don't know. And according to reporting yesterday, there was a standoff, or there was a stalemate, if you will, that had been arrived at.
Yes.
Right. So, where according to your tweet, you have the Regents Ado and Mary Sue, the interim president, on one side, and you have Ward and Mel on the other. And so I guess from that to consensus, what happened? Because the later tweet in the day yesterday for you says, okay, they're all on the same page. They're all in sync. They're all aligned. What happened
Mhm.
yesterday to bring alignment so quickly compared to the prior 2 or 3 months where apparently there wasn't this alignment, there wasn't this consensus, there was the stalemate. So what happened yesterday to change all that?
Let's clarify this first of all. There was not a standoff before last week. Leading up to this, the regions, again, they got full-time jobs and they handle the presidential search. I don't know if any of them had read the report until last week. So when Ward had floated the idea in May and June and July about an extension for Mel Pearson, he didn't get a lot of resistance. So it's not fair to say that Ward was going against the regents until basically a few days ago. So that is also eye-opening, that these reports need to, if you're going to commission the reports, you got to read them. And like I said, it wasn't that hard to get down to brass tacks. Now, a deeper dive is required, of course, and I've done it since. But I had no problem with 90 minutes, even less, about an hour, with my son and my wife on the beach of Lake Superior. I said, give me an hour. And that's what it took to break down the scene into the four main components we've already talked about. Not hard to figure out what the problem is, not hard to figure out the severity. So that should have been done a lot sooner. So it's not fair to say that Ward and the regents were at odds until recently. Now, some of the regents had their eyes open and were raising some alarms here, but until last week, the idea of an extension was not, a fire alarm to the regents. I think once the report went public and people saw what's in it and the regents dived in full blast, they quickly saw what the deal is. And after I reported and Katie Strang reported on Tuesday, it was a fervent 8-0 regents vote, informal though it was. That would be on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, Mary Sue Coleman, the interim, of course, about to retire in a month as the interim, she is talking to Ward with, I believe, the regents present on the Zoom. And at that point, she is pressing him hard to ask for Mel's retirement, is whatever, fire him, whatever the terms are today. We don't know what the terms are until today. We'll see. And Ward was still advocating for an extension even Wednesday morning. That surprises me. Then, of course, the conversations continued, and he came to their way of thinking. And as of yesterday, from all sides I've heard, they're very much in agreement. There's a strong consensus. Ward has not been beaten down on this one. That's not fair either. He has changed his views on it, and he is comfortable with the decision, is what I've heard. His decision, of course, which will be to let Mel Pearson go in some fashion today. And exactly when it happens, I've heard different things. And exactly what the terms will be, I've heard different things. I don't know. But now they're all on the same page.
So, I mean, glaring in the omission from our conversation and others is what are you hearing Red's take on this? It's far-fetched for me to believe that he doesn't serve. If he's a special advisor to the Big Ten on hockey, it's hard for me to imagine him not being an advisor to the future of the program that he built, Michigan's hockey program. So what sense do you have for where he falls on this?
Not much of a sense. I've not discussed this with Red in any way, shape, or form, and I'd tell you if I did. I know he's been supportive of Mel throughout Mel's tenure. He certainly wanted Mel to be named as his successor, which frankly was a pretty obvious call, and I've made jokes about that. That was the easiest call anyone had to make. Mel had been at Michigan for 23 years, I believe, for the entire run of the NCAA tournaments. Did a great job up here at Michigan Tech, where I am now. 6 years up here as alma mater. Got him back at the tournament twice, which was unheard of. up here since his playing days in the early 80s. And, he got a program up and running very quickly. So Red's done a very good job, in my opinion, of being both supportive of Mel and not being interfering. He's not down in the hockey building, of course, at Yost. As far as what's happening now, I really have no idea where Red stands. I will note only two things that we can all note, that he has neither said anything in support of Mel or against Mel during this whole process. So whatever he's thinking is news to me. But I will note that the complete absence of any former players from Mel's time as an assistant coach at Michigan to his time as a head coach at Michigan Tech or at Michigan, I have yet to hear or see any player say one thing publicly about this issue, which is noteworthy.
Mm-hmm. I want you to go ahead. Oh, sorry, Bex. I thought you hadn't finished your thought. Can you speculate for me though? Speculate these. Let's go into the 2 months. Do you think that there were other things that they were looking to? I mean, I don't know what you were looking into beyond the report. Maybe you're trying to reach out to Strauss. I don't know. But what's your speculation on what the last 2 months entailed? I mean, if there was no resistance to Mel getting extended last month, say, because all the regions hadn't read the report, and they even though they had it, why not push to get the extension signed then? Did they say back, hey, we need to read the report before we feel comfortable signing off on it? I mean, what kind of speculate for me what you think was kind of drag this thing out?
Great question, and I don't have all the answers. That's the easy, short, unsatisfying answer. That if Ward was determined to extend Pearson's contract, or actually, let's be clear, Pearson has been working without a contract since the end of the season, which is also very unusual. He's still an employee and he's still paid, but no contract, no buyout, no terms will be necessary here, and that itself is an eye opener. I don't know why it took 2 or 3 months. I don't know why you're determined to extend him, why you wouldn't just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's a nutshell. You just said, you asked my question for me in a nutshell. If you're determined to extend him and there's no opposition to extend him, then why not just extend him? Why didn't that happen if that was the motivation, that's what you were determined to do, and no one was offering you any pushback?
And I don't know. It's a mystery to me. And it's also, my guess is somebody in the general counsel's office or perhaps the regents said, look, we've not had a chance to read the report yet. Hold off. I'm purely guessing. I don't know. That's a bit of a mystery. And I mean, look, here it was August 5th, and somebody pointed out, or calling Bill Martin became the AD. Somebody explained to him, Bill, academia goes slower than business, and Michigan goes slower than academia. So it's a sluggish place in some ways. It's a big machine. And, look, let's be honest, this is hockey. It's not hiring a new president. It's not a dean of the medical school. So it's not the biggest issue they deal with on a daily basis, but it threatened to be another public black eye. So it probably should have gotten their attention sooner than it did. But it did not, for whatever reason, and there are vacations involved in too. It's July, that's a factor as well. But until it received media attention, very little action was being taken.
Mm-hmm. Talking to John U. Bacon this morning here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. So moving forward, because it was also, extremely, not only Strauss-Mann leaving, but you had Steve Shields, right, being the so-called, whistleblower, for lack of a better term here. I mean, it's suggestive to me that the silence from the hockey alumni is deafening. It's a very loud silence from them. So I wonder, after that, is there some consensus on the direction moving forward? I mean, whether that's from an interim standpoint or where they go as far as who the next coach will be. Have you already started to see, sort of sentiment galvanizing around that?
Great question there as well. And to tie up the previous segments, the the report, and this is back to your question about inaction. The reporters, the WilmerHale folks, said specifically the university should review whether Pearson's conduct violates other university policies, including but not limited to Standard Practice Guide 601.90, protection from retaliation. Man, that's making it about as easy as they can to do your homework. And to my knowledge, nothing has been done on that since the report dropped May 5th. They also point out pervasive fears amongst both student athletes and staff members of retaliation by Pearson for raising issues. And we didn't get to this one, but it's definitely worth getting to. Inconsistencies in Pearson's recollection, perception, and characterization of key incidents and issues as compared with other participants.
Yeah.
They are saying in prosecutorial terms,
he
repeatedly lied to the investigators about not trivial stuff like what day is it, 2 years ago, but serious stuff. In one case, he denied a conversation took place until Steve Shields produced the tape recording of the conversation. I don't know how you can keep somebody in your department who's doing that. I really don't. At any level of your department, any level of a school, frankly. And as I also point out too at the end, that perhaps some other information will temper my thoughts here, but based solely on this report, it is not clear to me how U of M could retain Pearson and claim it is serious about protecting students and employees. The hockey program's problems likely don't rise to the criminal level, but no employee or student should be expected to put up with such behavior. People who stuck their necks out should not be made to wait any longer. Action must be taken. If Michigan had extended Mel Pearson's contract, what have you just told to all the student athletes, all the employees who trusted what you said, who came forward to the investigators and to HR and to Title IX and to compliance, to all these people came forward and risking their careers, in the player's case, their future NHL careers if he retaliates, and or the people who are working there already. What would that have sent? At this point now, you can say, the critics would very easily say, it's be a national story, that of course Dr. Anderson happens on this campus because they don't listen to students. And of course, Provost Filbert can happen on this campus, and so can Dr. Schlissel, because they don't listen to employees. So at that point, you've established a pattern of malfeasance, which is incredibly ugly. So this may be a small case on the grand scale. It's a hockey program, 30 people involved total, whatever. But the precedent, if you will, would be have established that this is an ongoing systemic problem at the University of Michigan. That would have been a very, very serious mark against Michigan, says me.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I mean, it seems like at least the report suggests there's a very clear case of intimidating behavior when it came to Strauss-Mann. Your place in the program is in doubt, or can't remember the exact phrasing, to bad mouthing to scouts and NHL teams. But why did the report? Why didn't they come to the same conclusion about the intimidating behavior towards Steve Shields? Why did it say that they didn't see that as an example of the repercussions? Because on the surface, it would seem like he was being penalized for being a whistleblower, but the report seemed to not come to that conclusion. I wonder if you have an idea as to why.
Not much of an idea, but it is worth pointing out that the original mission of the report is determined and is brought to their attention by Steve Shields, the former All-American goalie of Michigan, played, I think, 12 years in the NHL. Obviously a first-rate goalie, came back to be a volunteer assistant goalie coach, not paid. Close relationship with Strauss-Mann, which you'd expect for a goalie coach. That he had filed reports saying he'd been intimidated against or retaliated against by Pearson by basically being fired and taking his card and locking the building and so on, keeping him out of the building, all that stuff. And WilmerHale did not find sufficient grounds to support that claim. So basically, they felt that he was, fired, let go. I don't know if he fired a volunteer assistant, but fired by Mel because it wasn't working out, and it's an at-will contract, even a volunteer one. And it was not based on retaliation. That was their finding. So I don't have a ton there for you. But it is worth pointing out that the original mission of the report was that, and they did not find Mel Pearson guilty of that. So let's get that one out there as well.
Yeah. All right. So like I posed before, the question I posed before about the sentiment among the hockey alumni. If they are not speaking, you know, outwardly, you know, being very public in their support for Mel Pearson, again, the silence in that regard is deafening. Is there some consensus among them about the direction moving forward? You know, I mean, maybe that's
Well,
the same question I sort of asked you about Red. Is there any sense about what Red thinks about all this? But you know, have the players sort of given you any indication about what they want to see happen after Mel, assuming that's that's the case?
well, they're probably the two most obvious picks would be Billy McCult, another All-American, won 2 national titles in '96 and '98 as one of the captains of the team in '98. Great NHL career, strong coaching career, including up here at Michigan Tech with Mel Pearson. He's been a head coach before too in the USHL. So anyway, he's been an assistant coach there under Mel throughout this process. There obviously has got a lot of appeal. I think he'll be a head coach somewhere sooner or later, but he also isn't. He is in the report or in the student survey. Sorry, in the student survey. And my guess, if I'm the AD, if I'm a regent, I would probably want a clean break from what has just happened.
So you mean Billy too?
Billy too, in terms of what?
I mean, you say clean break. So not just Mel. You
Oh, yeah,
mean?
I mean, he's in the report. It's not on Mel's level, but he had a couple missteps. He was there when all this was happening, and apparently didn't report it. So, I mean, as a rule, in any of these situations, you probably want to clean house. And that would be no one's asking my advice, I've noticed. But that would be my advice. Even though Billy's another good friend of mine, we skate together on Tuesday nights. I mean, these are all friends. And I think he will be a head coach someday somewhere. But the timing here is not good, especially when he's in the report a couple times. Not for big stuff, it seems to me, but he's in there. But anyway, that's one option. Other option is Brian Wiseman, another captain from '94. Played pro hockey. He's shorter than I am, so tough road for him as an NHL player, but got a cup of coffee up there. He had a very good coaching career. He was not, as I understand it, not comfortable with what Mel was doing. So 2 or 3 years ago, he left to be the assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers, which gives him good contacts with the NHL, good contacts with agents, and obviously he's coaching Connor McDavid, which is as good as it gets for offensive coaching. He is back in town. I know that NHL teams are reaching out to him. He has so far not signed with anybody. That to me would be the 2-foot putt. That's the easiest call in the world. And I'm sure he'd have Red support and the report of his teammates. That's who his teammates want. Now, we both know that teammates not speaking up for Mel, that gets my attention, but it's hard to read too much into it because it's not done by straw vote. And likewise, they're not the ones who pick the next coach. But that,
No doubt.
I mean, what's surprising to me about why they waited so long to take this action is you have a coach here who is not under contract. That's Mel Pearson. So you don't have the Jim Harbaugh question of, $5 million a year for 5 years and, tough buyout questions, which handcuff a lot of athletic directors. The buyout's zero. It's nothing. He'll stop getting paid the day he leaves. And in Ann Arbor, you have a guy already living here who wouldn't even have to move, who is already a candidate anyway. So this strikes me as there are very few obstacles here to making this change. So, who knows what Ward will do? I suspect he'll be doing this with the oversight of the regions this time. And the new president. That's the other thing too. We're dealing with a vacuum of leadership here. Mary Sue Coleman's got 1 month left on an interim contract, and President Ono, has been held up by the University of British Columbia. They're making him do his 90 days on the way out the door. I don't know what that accomplishes. A lame duck in Vancouver and pissed off people at Michigan, but he ain't going back to Vancouver after this. I'm sure of that. Unlike Cincinnati, where he's always welcome. So that's a problem as well. So
Yeah, Banks, I one of the things that I find the toughest to digest, to reconcile. I mean, this it's not like Mel Pearson is an outsider, is a foreigner to the program. I mean, this is a program guy. Everyone around or inside the program knew and knows him. So it's striking to me that he would come in and be a a different guy than the one that they all seem to know. You mentioned Brian Wiseman. He leaves because I think you said he didn't like what Mel was. I can't remember what your wording was, but he leaves because he didn't like how Mel was running things, as if to say, man, this is way different than I thought it was going to be. And how how do you get a different person than everyone seemed to know, from the assistant coaches to all the players that had played while he was here, to Red even, who I'm sure had a hand in him coming back. As you said, he wanted him to be his successor. This How that they could not know this is who he is after all those years is kind of perplexing to me.
It is, although I recall Bo talking about this. He said, man, you have no idea what an assistant coach is going to do as a head coach until he's the head coach. And we've seen that a lot. He said, guys I thought for sure would succeed, failed. And guys I thought for sure didn't have it, ended up they have it in spades. So there's always a mystery there becoming the head coach, assistant coach to head coach. Dave Lewis of the Red Wings, everyone loved him as an assistant coach under Scotty Bowman. And as a head coach, he just didn't have it. It happens. Now, in this case, we're talking about behaviors.
Yeah, behavior. Yeah, I'm not talking about coaching ability. This is like who you are as a guy, who you are as a person is what
there's always
is
some
being assessed
grumbling,
here.
right. There's always some grumbling, but it always seemed to me well within the bounds of, the grumbling that players have about coaches. So when you become a head coach, though, the psychology is different. It just is. So I think I can't answer that question very well, but I've seen it before, is all I can say. The personality changes when you become a head coach. I recall a comedian once saying about cocaine, that when you take cocaine, it amplifies your personality. And the comedian said, yes, but what if you're a jerk? So I think being on radio 4 hours a day amplifies your personality, and luckily you're a good guy. But we've seen guys get 4 hours a day and end up being less likable. So it does happen. And by the way, the investigation was a discrimination investigation.
Bakes, you kind of broke up. It sounds like you stepped into a tunnel there. I don't know what happened to your cell, but I can hardly make you out.
Oh, sorry, man.
Okay, there you
go. I'm pulling back to read my cell phone. That's why. Sorry. Okay. Wilmer Hale did say in the report that I read, that Pearson most likely did retaliate against Pearson, but did not discriminate as they saw it. So he didn't win that round, if you will, but they raised plenty of smoke. So we should get that clear.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Bakes, I know this was a tough one for you because what you said, these are.
It's a trip to the dentist, Sam.
Yeah, these are friends.
You know what? You got to do it, and I got to do it. So.
Yeah, this is as much as there is a duty. There's often disappointment in duty, right? And there's a lot of disappointment on this one because we aren't talking about coaching ability, and I clearly don't know all the principal parties nearly as well as you do. So I can imagine if reading this, you're like, man, that just doesn't sound like the guy that we talk to all the time. I can only imagine how it hits you and others who have known him much better for far longer. It just disappointing, man.
Not at all.
But put it.
You have to give Michigan credit. It's on Michigan that it took this long. I do wonder about the reporting procedures in the athletic department, if they are working the way they should, because it's only the Hill that really caught this. The Regents in the report, of course. But you have to give credit to the students and the employees who came forward under great duress. It's been a very tense year for them, to say the least. One guy had felt compelled to go to the minor leagues in Sweden. That's how bad that was. But they came forward, and the university ultimately did the right thing. So that you have to give a lot of credit and a lot of fronts. Or else it would have been a lot. If this is not stopped, this is how you get a Dr. Anderson situation eventually, is that upstream, when you get a chance to stop it, no one does, and then it gets worse. So that's not a great day for Michigan, but it could have been a lot worse. This is 1 day story, 2 day story stuff.
Yeah.
It is a 2 day story, but it won't be a 3 day story.
Yeah, earlier this morning, and maybe this, as you were talking about, what the holdup may have been. Ira talked about this morning some reporting about an appeal. Have you gotten any word on that? Any sourcing on that? Appeal by whom and of what? Even.
It would be by Mel Pearson. You are allowed to appeal this report, as I understand it. If he's let go today, which I am anticipating, I've been told that by people who know exactly what's going on, that you can appeal that as well. That's part of the process. But where that stands, it's not clear to me. And none of it can stop an athletic director from making decisions that he feels fit to make. So that will not stop that. So anyway, not much fun today, to say the least. But the system ultimately works, I think, the way it's supposed to. It was sluggish. It was slow. It should have been more efficient. It should have been less drama involved, less trauma involved. But it got to where it's supposed to get. That's my impression.
Yeah, I mean, because you laid it out again a couple of minutes ago, and you said, well, his contract expired. I mean, this is the easiest. It's hard to let go of a successful coach, but as far as extricating yourself from someone, it doesn't get much easier than this one right?
It never is this easy, Sam, because finding a coach is not under contract. There's not one on campus, except for Mel Pearson. And how often is a potential successor, who's not a stopgap, but probably the guy you'd want anyway, under any circumstances, he's right there. I mean, they may not go in that direction. That they can do whatever they want. And there'll be more than one candidate for this job, including possibly Blashill, Babcock, and others, big-time NHL guys. But pick them well, pick them carefully. Knowing the culture is everything. So that's what we've discovered more than once here, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, just a much larger question to that point. I mean, you just mentioned a couple of guys that would be outside the family, so to speak. I mean, can you do that? I mean, is it with the alums, would they want you to go with the very obvious guy who's still in the family? Would there be some pushback if you didn't go in the direction of Brian Wiseman?
The alums would probably vote 100% to 0 for Brian Wiseman versus an outsider.
Right.
I see zero question about that. Mm-hmm. I've heard in all my time on the program, 30 some years, wrote the book on it and so on. I've yet to hear a negative word about Brian Wiseman from any of his teammates or his players when he was coaching. That's my impression.
Right. And let me give you the reason. The premise of the question is, look, they just went inside the family with a guy who was universally, this is the guy, right? Everyone was saying Mel Pearson is the guy.
It can always fail.
Yeah. So you could.
We both know, Sam. Anything can fail.
Yeah. Yeah. You can also see reactions that make you want to go. People in positions to make these hires go in a totally opposite direction because that didn't work. It can, like you say, it can always fail. So let me do something different this time. I don't know that would be the thought process here, but we've just seen that happen before.
Yeah, and look, I mean, what I predicted all this 2 years ago, no way in hell. Never. So that's why predictions aren't worth much, are they? So who knows? And I know that I'm not making the decision. I would be shocked if anybody asked me outside of my friend Sam Webb my opinion on this. So, and last I checked, you and I aren't running much. So
not at all. Not at all.
So, by the way,
just asking questions, man. Just asking questions and trying to understand.
Oh, you're asking good questions. A fun little aside, Drew Van Dries, if I'm pronouncing that correct. Drew, I hope I am. He says, for what it's worth, this is irrelevant overall, but worth mentioning that Strauss was not Michigan's first goalie captain, the 6th ever, it turns out, but the first since World War II, basically. So apparently in the 30s, it was quite common to have, and I wrote the damn book, so I should know this, right? But he's not
the first. It's in Blue Ice. Read it.
What's that? What did he say?
It's in a great book. It's a great book. Blue Ice. You should read it sometime.
The scariest thing about a book tour is when you go on a book tour, people you're talking to in the audience, they just read it like this week. You've not read it in 6 months. They know your book better than you do. That's
Isn't that crazy? I've had that experience before where someone recalled something I wrote better than me. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time, but it's like, oh, you remember you reported so and so? Yeah, kind of.
Exactly. And then I'm left with that dumb look on my face, and I think, well, that sounds like something I would say. I can't even quote myself accurately. That's not good.
Right. Hey, man, I get it. I understand totally. I also understand the difficult position that you're in, man, when you got to report on your friends. Yeah, but that's why you're a pro. That's why you're a pro, Bakes, and I appreciate you coming on, and lending voice to it. Is you already wrote about it, and then to come on and talk about it too, that's even more difficult. So, hey, man,
I appreciate that. What's good about talking about it? You handle things responsibly. You always ask good questions. You don't flinch. That's for sure. But I can have a reasonable conversation where we can fill in some blanks that we don't get to even in writing. So this was therapeutic for me, I suppose, and also hopefully edifying for the listeners who've been following this. That we filled in some blanks here today that, and you ask questions that make a lot of sense. So we'll see what happens next. But man, you know what? It's supposed to be the off season after basketball, isn't it? For you and me. I don't recall a slow Friday yet.
Yeah. Hasn't been one, man. Never had. I don't know that there's been a season where I was wanting to see games more to get away from all the topics of the off season than right now than this one. So can't wait for the season. Bakes, as always, appreciate your time, man. And much lighter next week, we can hope.
There you go. And my take on this is, of course, on Twitter, but it's also on johnubacon.com for a longer, deeper dive. Well handled, Sam. Yes, let's hope for lighter topics in the future.
Right, no doubt. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for us here today.